Hello, good morning and welcome. It's Tuesday, November the 18th. Keir Starmer has given an interview with the Mirror overnight in which he slammed internal rows from the last week as a distraction for the government. Shame he couldn't find the person or persons who briefed against Wes Streeting his health secretary. At least not yet. My name is Anne McElvoy from Politico.
And my name is Sam Coates of Sky News. Keir Starmer told the Mirror he would lead Labour into the next election. So that's cleared up then, isn't it? Then he said, let me be really clear. Every minute that's not spent talking about dealing with the cost of living is a minute wasted of the political work of this government. Now, the Mirror cites a freeze on prescription charges as the latest example of helping people with their cost of living. But I have to say, Anne, the messaging for this budget is all over the place. There's a stealth income tax raid coming, and there isn't really the money in the Treasury coffers for large-scale help with bills. So can he really make an argument pursued like this?
Well, we will know for sure next week. But for now, the person enjoying having the argument, at least, is the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, and not just with Nigel Farage, whom she told to sod off yesterday for suggesting that she was sounding like a Reform MP, as well as issuing a sweary defence of her right to make sweeping changes to the asylum system.
Now, if anyone wondered why yesterday's announcement happened yesterday, and it did include that eye-catching and controversial announcement that we saw overnight on the front page of the Times and elsewhere, that families will be amongst those that the government wants to deport in time. The reason for the timing is because there is likely to be more challenging news today on the migration front. At 9:30 a.m, there'll be fresh migration stats, an update on the previously published migration estimates to the year ending December 2024. So not covering new estimates, which are out next Thursday for the first 6 months of this year, but updating the ones for the last 6 months of last year. So the first 6 months that Labour were in power. And I think that the Home Office will be very much hoping that even if those stats aren't great, and we know quite a lot of the underlying figures, so they're unlikely to be, it'll help make the case for everything that Shabana Mahmood was arguing for yesterday.
In the face of a revolt of about 24 MPs on her asylum overhaul, Mahmood's team have been making clear she is very relaxed about taking on internal opponents. One saying politics is about making arguments for things that you think are right. In fact, she seems to be enjoying doing just that in the teeth of some opposition. Another ally told me she has all the right enemies. She's taking the new Labour view, Sam, that if your party is in part up in arms about it, there must be something good about the idea.
Look, everyone knows that there's an audition going on at the moment. And a lot of people I spoke to thought that Shabana Mahmood did very, very well. Because when you talk to people in private, there is a sense that the government is now pretty time limited, whatever Keir Starmer tells the Mirror. I just wanted to relay a conversation that I had yesterday with somebody in government. Now, the starting point for this chat was whether or not Rachel Reeves could credibly say after the budget that this is the last set of tax rises in this parliament, or whether in a year's time she would be back for even more because of her fiscal rules, right? That was the question. And quick as a flash, the person just replied, oh, Sam, nobody in government thinks this administration is going to be making it past May. Just completely matter of fact, just telling journalists it's all over. I mean, I thought I'd mention it because it's a bit of a marker.
Accentuate the positive. Not. You can feel that every outing right now on a big policy matter, as you found in that conversation, Sam, feels like there are people just trying on shoes for size and fit. And Mahmoodism definitely in the air, but do expect a powerful counter movement. However, that's for the weeks ahead. Let's rip through today. Starmer is out of the country again, but I think that's okay because he's going to my favourite city of Berlin for a working dinner with Chancellor Friedrich Merz and President Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of chuntering amongst Labour MPs about just how much time Keir Starmer is out of the country. There always has been, but I picked it up again in Portcullis House last night. He'll be in Johannesburg on Friday for a G20 summit. One Labour MP was telling me that they thought that, or they've been told that the Prime Minister has 6 foreign trips at the back end of the year. So each one needs to be justified. Why, Anne, other than it being your favourite city, does this one matter?
I think this one does matter, for a start, because Ukraine, while it may be out of the immediate headlines, is in a pretty dire situation. I had a briefing in Berlin on that last week. Kyiv has been sending very senior politicians to lobby the Germans as the winter gets underway, and the war is in a very precarious state indeed. The Germans are the biggest payer into that. And Starmer also wants help from Friedrich Merz, particularly, and Macron. So it's good to have them both together there. We're back in that triangle with France and Germany on this standoff over the SAFE scheme. That is how much the UK has to pay into the European pot to be able to partake in these big multilateral defence contracts that we also want to win. And Merz in particular is an ally there, but it's very good then to have the shakedown conversations with the French involved. The cash is, by the way, still very unresolved on that. And I think there's about of a 2 billion gap between the two sides in the negotiation, according to my Politico colleagues in Brussels and Berlin. Oh, and one other thing, which is just for your amusement, Sam, is that Starmer and Merz have one thing in common as well. The German Chancellor got an absolute pasting from his party youth wing in the last couple of days over a standoff on pensions and pension entitlements in the future, which is just roiling the youth wing of his party. He had a very, very wobbly outing indeed. And he almost seemed to lose control of what he was saying. So Starmer and Merz can maybe compare which headache medication they find most effective.
It's interesting that he's going at this point, because in the slightly warmer days of early autumn, I remember when Rachel Reeves was promising that by now, this government, Keir Starmer's government, would have wrapped up things like the negotiation about the youth mobility programme. And not only would they have wrapped it up, but the Office of Budget Responsibility would have scored a whole load of growth off the back of it, and that would help ease the pressure in the budget. None of that has happened. And there is a sense, because of the budget black hole, because of their problems, our problems, that things aren't on track. So, as you say, a significant meeting. Right, let's get on with this week's Sky Times YouGov voting intention poll. The Tories are down on 17. Reform UK are on 27. They're up 1. Labour on 19, no change. Lib Dems on 13. And Greens up 2 on 17. So all of the movement this week is within the margin of error. But note that the Greens are equal with the Conservatives once more, and at their highest so far. So not past their peak yet.
Yeah, it looks okay-ish for Labour, given where they were. But yeah, they're not moving where they want to be, which is to go back to being clear of 20% to show some momentum. Trend-wise, there's no big change, is there? Except it's quite nice for Zach Polanski. A couple of other things to highlight. The FT's got a leak on an announcement the government has scheduled for Wednesday. Ministers want to make it illegal to resell tickets for more than their face value in the initial sale to end industrial scale touting. Big profits made by resellers, I think, were highlighted when thousands of Oasis fans complained about the cost of buying resale tickets to shows at Wembley Stadium. Some went for more than £4,000. I mean, maybe this is a pot Rachel Reeves could fruitfully raid if she needs help with her budget. Anyway, so there's new legislation being drawn up on that question. Is that sensible, good consumer protection, or is it an intervention in the market?
Look, I really think that a government shows the colour of its attitude towards the market in stuff like this. One person's cost of living reform is another person's attack on capitalism. Will it just push the problem onto the black market? We will see. But I think these things are disproportionately kind of telling on the character and the instincts of the people at the top. Also coming up, Defence Secretary John Healey is making a speech in Westminster tomorrow on defence investment. Now, normally I wouldn't mention a speech tomorrow in today's podcast, but clearly somebody thinks it's so interesting that they wanted us to pitch roll it today without even giving us any substance. So no pressure, guys, but you seem to think you've got a something special on your hands, and, I just do what I'm told. So I'm intrigued. Apparently it's part of the government's pre-budget drumbeat and will include a growth focused announcement.
And since there's a week and a day to go until the budget, competing events with both the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch and Reform's Nigel Farage both up at the same time in Westminster. So there's a compare and contrast split screen moment to take a look at the Tories and Reform side by side.
Full disclosure, I'll be going to the Tory event and there are interviews with Kemi Badenoch afterwards. Before we get to the opposition approach to the budget, I've been hearing a little bit more about what's going on a week tomorrow with a bit of the substance. Now, to rewind a tiny bit, the story of this budget is that the government has a massive black hole to fill and was considering and then junked a plan to raise income tax and decided to raise money by other means. This is the now infamous smorgasbord of tax measures and other things that they are contemplating. I mean, the joke going around Whitehall is that this is the first budget to unravel before it's been delivered, but I'm not sure the Treasury want to hear that. But here's what I'm picking up, Anne. And I'm picking up that this sort of latter-day attempt to squeeze money out of everywhere that you possibly can across Whitehall is proving challenging. So one person I was talking to yesterday said they are coming for everything. And the they in that is the Treasury. They are coming for everything. So the Treasury are going around hunting for little pots of money that they can squeeze, projects that haven't started yet, things that can be pushed kind of into the future in order to try and make the numbers add up. You know, you can cut from here, shave from there, tax a bit more, charge a bit more. So all over Whitehall, the Treasury are suddenly, at short notice, engaging in big battles with cabinet ministers and Whitehall departments in order to shake them down for whatever cash that they can do, including, one said, rolling back on policies that have already kicked off. Now, this is really messy. Squeezing small things is the stuff that voters really matters. And there is understandable frustration that this is all happening at the last minute, not least since we've known since July that this problem exists. But here we are, a week and a day before the budget, and it's all getting quite fraught and quite tense with these fresh demands that have only come in the last week. It shouldn't really happen like this.
No, it shouldn't. But if we don't know the general direction of tax policy, perhaps it's not surprising that there is a lot more hoovering around the skirting boards going on to get a hold of the right savings that Rachel Reeves feels she needs to hit her targets. That said, it's not so unusual for a chancellor to be making life difficult for spending colleagues in the run-up to a budget. That is true, but it's usually when you've decided what you want to do on the big picture and then you want to move some pots around, maybe paying out some favours and taking money from Peter to pay Paul. But it's not so much this smorgasbord attractive image that we were offered. I think it's looking a bit like these store cupboard recipes you get where you have to use up all the old ingredients that must contain lentils.
Yuck. Look, I agree that this is not the first time that people have come back for more in the run up to a budget, but I think it matters more in this budget than it has done. You know, this sense that the government is struggling with the pounds and the pence of this budget. Now, that's because this budget has to be, if Rachel Reeves is to survive and Keir Starmer is to survive, the last big tax rising budget in this parliament, right? I don't think there's any chance that we could wear her coming back for a third time in a year's time. But at the same time, if she's squeezed every last bit of money out of every bit of Whitehall and taken the big tax levers off the table for the whole parliament, what happens when the global trade war, the worsening economy, or the fact you've got to spend a bit more because you can't control your backbenchers mean that you just have to find more cash? Now, this is the kind of thing that worries the market, and they just think, with everything that happens, and including the stuff I've been telling you just now, the government's getting more boxed in. But they also, and I was with some traders yesterday, and they told me something that's not market sensitive. In fact, it's blindingly obvious, but it is another problem. Now, it is that the day after the budget, Anne, is Thanksgiving, the US holiday of Thanksgiving, meaning the entirety of the US markets will be shut. Now, normally, if there's a UK budget and if it doesn't go to plan, on the international markets, it's drowned out because US activity just dominates. But that's not going to happen the day after the budget. So if things do go a bit sour and the budget isn't received well by the UK markets because they worry that the sums just won't add up in the medium term, then there's no cushion of American trading and no cushion of American noise to sort of dampen it down. So there could be a giant echo chamber of things clanging because of what's going on in the UK. And that might actually mean greater turbulence because of the date that they've picked.
Oh, interesting sequencing. Nigel Farage and his head of policy, Zia Youssef, will effectively unveil an alternative plan for a budget, a bid for 25 billion in spending cuts drawn from three big ticket items they think will be popular on the right: steep foreign aid cut, another one, a rise in the NHS surcharge for foreigners, and removal of universal credit for all EU citizens. It's not hard to see what is linking those all together. The argument that it is foreign citizens who should bear the brunt of tax rises and spending cuts in the budget. The thing that strikes me about that, Sam, was a little while ago, it was seen as a pretty out there reform way of approaching a budget. And some of that now just looks like Shabana Mahmood plus, plus, plus. The Overton window is somewhat flapping open nowadays.
Yeah, I think the Overton window shifting on asylum and immigration, plus the need for more money in the Treasury coffers, produces exactly this kind of policy. The Tories also have an event, as we mentioned earlier, with Kemi Badenoch and Mel Stride. Playbook very cleverly just highlight exactly what the divide is between Reform and the Tories. They spell out that, in contrast with the Reform offer, Farage and co are explicitly announcing plans to limit welfare to EU citizens today, but Badenoch makes clear that she wants to cut benefits further for everyone. So that's the dividing line. It's about who you take from, and Kemi Badenoch's approach is a more broader base of UK citizens as well. There's no specific announcement from the Tories today. They don't have a policy announcement as such. They're just reinforcing their pre-budget announcement that the government shouldn't have to raise taxes. The final word, really, I think today should go on what we think of the performance of Shabana Mahmood and how that landed, because that'll bleed into today. There's a round of interviews, including with my colleague Beth Rigby. And how do you think she's done?
Well, I quite like the Playbook headline, "Slightly Happier Families," which is obviously a reference to the mood in Labour after those swinging announcements on asylum and immigration changes from the Home Secretary, in a sense that they've got the ball back in possession after, shall we say, very, very messy footwork over the last few weeks. Yes, it looks like it was an early win for Labour and for Mahmood on her home terms. Her allies firmly of the view she is much more aligned with the public view that this illegal migration problem needs a very firm grip. It doesn't matter if she annoys the parties left and also those liberal refugee charities. A year ago, I think, were keener to have Labour in power than they might be now that they've got them. You had a quote, I think, for the main refugee council saying, "This is not who we are." And I think explicitly Mahmood is saying this is exactly who we are. It's just a lot of people haven't wanted to hear it for a long time on the left and in the more liberal centre ground. That's the argument. I think there's odd parts of it, perhaps, where sometimes tonally you will get that accusation of performative cruelty, whatever you do. But I wonder whether she hasn't got some elements in there and perhaps some timelines that she might be prepared to water down a bit as it goes through Parliament in order to show that she's reasonable, she's listening. At the moment, she's just hammering the message home. I sometimes wonder whether she makes a lot of points all in one go. I wonder at some point whether sometimes at some point she may need to also stop and show that she's listening in order to power on, but show that she has heard colleagues. Former holder of her office said to me, "It's a very interesting position if the Home Secretary to be the most out there person. Sometimes it's good to have someone else also who has your flank." Is that going to be Keir Starmer, or is it always going to be the Shabana show?
I'm not quite sure how what Shabana said yesterday completely meshes with what Keir Starmer said about race and inclusion at Labour conference. But moreover, if you pull the camera back, Shabana Mahmood just reminds us that the Labour Party is split in four. She represents the right, but the blue Labour bit of the right. Then there's the sort of more liberal right, the sort of often associated with Wes Streeting. Then there's the soft left, who don't love any of this stuff and are still looking for their own candidate for the leadership, should that happen. And then there's the harder left, the sort of John McDonnell wing. The Labour Party is still a relatively disunited family on all sorts of stuff. And the fact that some bits are cheering and some bits are not from Mahmood's speech just serves to reinforce that. There was the alarm. And we must get back in our box. So we will say thank you very much indeed for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow morning.
See you tomorrow.
Hey, it's Sophie and Will from Sky News.
Too many headlines, too little time?
We get it, and that's why we're bringing you Cheat Sheet.
10 minutes every weekday morning.
All the big stories from politics to pop culture, minus the noise.
No doom scrolling, no spin, just the stories that matter from two people who live and breathe the news. Cheat Sheet with Ridge and Frost from Sky News.
Follow Cheat Sheet wherever you get your podcasts.